Dance, Stanford dance. Teachers called Stanford Binet conscientious. This meant he did all his homework, studied for every test, kept the inside of his desk tidy, and always returned his library books on time. This also meant he annoyed his classmates. Why can't you act like a regular kid? Calvin asked during Friday free time. Stanford, who was alphabetizing next month's vocabulary words, snorted. You mean waste my time like everyone else? He rolled his eyes. Get serious. I am serious, said Calvin. You should play more games, have more fun, laugh once in a while. Stanford snorted again. Playing games won't earn me an A in spelling. Having fun won't make me the best student in class. Laughing won't get me into a top-notch college. Geez, said Calvin, who cares about stupid stuff like that? I do, snapped Stanford. He went back to his alphabetizing. Calvin went back to his finger paints. Just then, Mr. Jupiter clapped his hands. Put away your things and line up at the door, please. It's time to rehearse for this year's fall musical. I hate the fall musical, Lenny grumbled as the children headed down the hall. I always end up wearing a squirrel costume. Leonard, corrected Mr. Jupiter, you know I don't allow that word. There is no hating in my classroom. Lenny looked around. I'm not hating in the classroom, he said. I'm hating in the hallway. There is no hating in the hallway either, said Mr. Jupiter. The children walked into the auditorium. Can I hate in here? Asked Lenny. Mr. Jupiter shook his head. I hate that, Lenny muttered under his breath. He followed the others onto the stage. Mrs. Playwright, the traveling drama teacher, was waiting for them. Until this year, every elementary school had always had its own drama teacher, but the district had run out of money. Now all 64 elementary schools shared Mrs. Playwright. She smiled. I am so excited about this year's fall musical at Marcus Aurelius Elementary School. Marcus Aurelius, repeated Humphrey. The children looked at one another. You mean Aesop Elementary School, said Amisha. What? Said Mrs. Playwright. This is Aesop School, said Bernadette. It is? Said Mrs. Playwright. She flipped open her calendar. Let's see. Marcus Aurelius School in the 6th, Caesar School in the 16th, Ovid School in the 26th. Aesop School on the... She turned back to the children. I am so excited about this year's fall musical at Aesop Elementary School. She handed out sheets of music. Now then, children, she said, this is the song you will be performing. Let's sing just the first verse so I know what you sound like. Ready? She tooted her pitch pipe, and the children squawked. Up on the treetops I see leaves. They are swaying in the breeze. First they are green, but then it turns cold. They change to red and orange and gold. Gag, said Calvin. Gross, said Imberly. Barf, said Mrs. Playwright. That was awful. This class is going to need lots of singing practice. Now, let's see your dancing skills. Your routine goes like this, she demonstrated. Side together, clap. Side together, clap. Shimmy, shuffle, hop, turn, kick. Cha-cha-cha-cha-cha. Now you try, she said. The children hopped, shuffled, kicked. Ugh. Amisha bumped into Ham. Rachel tripped over Melvin. Bruce accidentally grabbed Bernadette's hand. Cooties, he cried. Get serious, snorted Stanford. It's a scientific fact that girls don't have cooties. Then you won't mind if I do this, said Bruce, and he wiped his hand on Stanford's Theory of Relativity shirt. Disgusting, cried Stanford. I agree, said Mrs. Playwright. Your dancing skills are disgusting. This class is going to need lots of dancing practice, too. How long do we have to learn it all? Stanford asked. Just 6 weeks, answered Mrs. Playwright. That means all of you will need to get serious, said Stanford. Exactly, said Mrs. Playwright, and she smiled at Stanford. The 4th graders at Cicero Elementary School are certainly conscientious. Cicero Elementary School, repeated Humphrey. You mean Aesop Elementary School? Corrected Victoria. What? Said Mrs. Playwright. This is Aesop Elementary School, said Lil. Oh, right, said Mrs. Playwright. She shook her head to clear it. The fourth graders here at Aesop Elementary are certainly conscientious. I try, said Stanford. I think I'm going to be sick, gagged Bruce. After that, Stanford practiced every chance he got. He practiced on the playground, up on the treetops, in the lunch line. I see leaves. Even in the boys' bathroom, they are swaying in the breeze. His classmates watched with annoyance. Why bother? Bernadette asked one day. The fall musical is a long way off. Get serious, said Stanford. The day of the show will be here before you know it. I'm learning my part, and I think you should too. But no one listened to his advice. 3 weeks before the musical, Stanford knew the entire song, all 3 verses by heart. The others knew nothing. Let's take it again from the top, cried Mrs. Playwright during rehearsal. She blew her pitch pipe and sang, Up on the treetops I see fleas, sang Rose. A wet sneeze, sang Bruce. Limburger cheese, sang Ham. Get serious, said Stanford. Why? Replied his classmates. We still got plenty of time. They kept rhyming. Stanford kept practicing. 2 weeks before the musical, Stanford could do every kick, shimmy, and shuffle perfectly. The others could do nothing. Show me your cha-cha-cha, cried Mrs. Playwright during rehearsal. Bernadette did 2 leaps in an arabesque. Jackie spun around on her back. Bruce grabbed Calvin and tangoed him around the stage. Get serious, said Stanford. We will, replied his classmates, later. They all tangoed. Stanford practiced. 1 week before the musical, Stanford could sing all 3 verses while kicking, shimmying, and shuffling at the same time. As for the others, oh, we'll start tomorrow, they said. You promise? Begged Mrs. Playwright. Cross our hearts and hope to cha-cha-cha, they replied. Stanford rolled his eyes. Get serious, he said, and he kept practicing. When the night of the fall musical arrived, the auditorium was crammed full. Exhausted teachers, excited students, proud parents, bored brothers and sisters, crying babies, obligated school board members, aunts, uncles, grandparents, even a photographer from the local newspaper took up every seat. Mrs. Playwright stepped into the spotlight. Welcome to Petronius Elementary School Fall Musical. The audience looked at one another. You mean Aesop Elementary School, whispered Mrs. Struggles from the front row. What? Asked Mrs. Playwright. Aesop School, Mrs. Buns bellowed through the bullhorn she always kept at her side. Is it? Asked Mrs. Playwright, and she flipped over her calendar. Let's see, Petronius on the 4th, Fleming the Elder on the 14th, Horace on the 24th, Aesop School on the... She turned back to the audience. Welcome to Aesop Elementary School's Fall Musical. The audience clapped. Backstage, the 4th graders watched nervously as the 1st graders brought down the house with their song, I'm a Little Acorn. The 2nd graders tickled the audience's funny bone with a humorous skit called Roly Poly Pumpkin. The 3rd graders stopped the show with their interpretive dance, Make Applesauce. Then it was the 4th graders' turn. Break a leg, said Mr. Jupiter. That's a terrible thing to say, said Missy. It's an expression I learned while performing Cats in Broadway, explained Mr. Jupiter. It's theater talk for good luck. Oh, well, in that case, thank you, said Missy. You're welcome, said Mr. Jupiter, and he hurried off to take his seat in the audience. You're on, whispered Mrs. Playwright. She began pushing the children from the wings. They stumbled on stage and into the spotlight. Now what? Whispered Lenny. He shoved the sagging hood of his squirrel costume out of his eyes just as the music started. Up on the treetops, the 4th graders began shaking. I see leaves, Stanford belted out. Bursting from the wings, he whirled across the stage, his oak leaf costume fluttering behind him, bumping past Lenny. Oomph! elbowing aside Amberly. Ouch! Tripping Victoria. Hey! He sighed together, clapped as he sang, up on the treetops I see leaves. They are swaying in the breeze. First they are green, but when it turns cold, they change to red and orange and gold. His classmates tried to keep up, but it was no use. They kicked when they should have shimmied, they shuffled when they should have kicked, and no one knew when to cha-cha-cha. Finally, they came to a complete standstill as Stanford danced around them, then burst into the second verse. Go, 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 where did they go? Ho, 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 don't you know? The audience leaped to its feet as Stanford cha-cha-cha'd his way into the big finish. That's when the wind blows swish, 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 and they come floating down like this. As the rest of the class slunk off stage, the audience whistled, stomped their feet, and shouted, Encore! Encore! Mrs. Claret asked Stanford to take a bow, and the newspaper photographer snapped his picture. Our readers want to know, he said, do you plan on becoming a singer and dancer when you grow up? Stanford snorted, get serious. Then he hurried off stage to work on his book report about The Haunted Room by Hugo First. After all, it was due in just 6 weeks. The moral of this chapter is, it is wise to prepare today for the wants of tomorrow. Again, it is wise to prepare today for the wants of tomorrow. There you go.